What is cybersecurity? Well, first of all, we have to understand that in a digital age that we live, where technology is really everything that we do, cybersecurity doesn't just affect lawyers, it affects us as humans. And unfortunately or fortunately, lawyers are humans as well. So when it comes to cybersecurity, what is the connection between cybersecurity and law? The gap that bridges the two industries, which seemingly have nothing to do with another, is technology. Law is really catching up with technology.
Hello, welcome back. This is Andreea Parc, and this is Alive.Again podcast, a podcast where attorneys and other professionals meet to discuss real life challenges and how our decisions shaped our journeys. Alexa is not with us today because she has two major shows coming up in September, and she was allowed to be excused from today's conversation. But we have with us a good friend, Galina Barbascumpa, who was with us last year, one of our first guests when we started the podcast. She is a multilingual business intelligence consultant, and I'm gonna let her explain more about what she does in that capacity. She sent me a long list of degrees and titles, and I prefer to keep it as is. Thank you so much, Galina, for being with us today. It's such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Andrea. It is such a pleasure to be with you again. Going back to my bio, I know that every time somebody's being asked to send a bio, the bio is there. But I feel like, at least for me, the more degrees and title I've acquired, the more I didn't want to actually talk about them. And I feel like I know the least. The more you learn, the least you think you know. So I'm just gonna, in a few words, what I'm doing in the moment. I am an attorney by training. However, I ended up in this wonderful business landscape where I have the opportunity to work with laws while practicing a little bit of compliance, a little bit of business. And in a way, my career came along after all the research, and what I'm doing right now. It is very difficult to explain. So if my mother would ask me what I'm doing, I would not be able to tell her. So I'm going to leave it at that. Thanks, Andrea. Back.
Thank you so much. So last year we discussed more of the personal side of what you do and what you've done with your life and your career, but now is more on the professional side. And I want to mention that we're actually both LLM graduates at Cardozo Law School, and that we have met about, I was thinking this morning, it's what, 11 years ago at a international conference in Chicago. So we kept the friendship going ever since. And I want to focus on, because we're both trained lawyers and I work with lawyers, and I want to focus on the legal part, on what you do and your expertise. And in the news and in the conversation, cybersecurity is a very complex conversation. And I want to ask you, what is the cybersecurity with the law connection? Because you've built your career around law and the intersection of law, data, and cybersecurity. So now let me actually cut to the chase and ask you the question. How do all these worlds intersect in the real world that we all live in? And why is it increasingly important for lawyers to understand cybersecurity risks?
Thank you, Andrea. And I think this is the time to, and probably every time you'll ask me a question, I'll go back to the bio that we didn't actually go the extra mile to, say, make a big fuss about it. So I'm currently studying cybersecurity risk management at NYU, which is a hybrid program between NYU Law and the School of Engineering. And it's And I am a lawyer by training, as we discussed that at the beginning. However, somehow I've always been passionate about where law meets other areas. And I at first I worked in technology and healthcare, and then I transitioned to business and law, and then technology. So cybersecurity, in a way, I know that especially in today's market, we do like to use a lot of buzzwords. We use buzzwords because they're selling. It is in the end all about business, but a lot of times it is very important to break it down. What is that? What does that mean? Is cybersecurity just important for lawyers? Is cybersecurity? What is cybersecurity? Well, first of all, we have to understand that in a digital age that we live, where technology is really in everything that we do, cybersecurity doesn't just affect lawyers, it affects us as humans. And unfortunately or fortunately, lawyers are humans as well. So when it comes to cybersecurity, what is the connection between cybersecurity and law? The connection, the gap that bridges the two industries, which seemingly have nothing to do with another, is technology. For those of you who practiced law in 2008, and then I just happened to catch the boom in 2017 where the law firms were transitioning in a virtual space, and then with COVID, it was really madness. I was really a boots on the ground when we were helping this law firms transition, and it was a boom which eventually blew up. And why I'm saying that, because law is really catching up with technology, right? And cybersecurity shows that over and over, because although the law is trying to frame it, to regulate it, it is very difficult to do that, because especially lawyers, we know how stubborn we are. We know how traditional and conservative courts are, even with the transitioning to the virtual realm. I assure you, because when I was working with courts from different states, from different counties, they're so stubborn to hold on to their traditions. To this day, they don't have a way for you to e-file documents online. And I personally went through that. A law firm in New York who has the funds to invest in technology, and now I am watching this transition again with cyber, right? A lawyer who has the funds will invest in securing its technology or its access to data, right? Sensitive data of the client. A law firm who doesn't have the funds will not do that. And this is the connection. Those who don't have the funds to invest in securing their technology, which they can't really operate without it, then they will be vulnerable against threat actors. And I hope I answer that question.
It's interesting that you mentioned how stubborn are attorneys, because I remember I was practicing law when they implemented the e-filing, and it was madness between the courts that didn't know, the clerks that didn't know how to handle it, and the older attorneys that didn't know how to handle it. It was crazy. But now, going back to the cyber threats and to law firms and corporations, can you name few behaviors that lawyers, and because ultimately we're human and we need to comply with the technology. So what would be few behaviors that attorneys and corporations must do to comply with this?
Obviously, there is a very difference, first of all, expectations between private companies and between public companies, and between a law firm that has, let's say, 5 employees, and a law firm that has, I don't know, 100 to 500, because public companies, they're more they're regulated, so they're being held to higher standards. And their compliance department usually handles compliance with the frameworks and with some of the regulations that are out there with respect to cybersecurity. However, if we want to just say in a few words, again, we come back to the human factor, which even in corporations, right, the most important resource that takes the elevator is the human, right? Taking a step back, especially with cyber, the biggest concept, which it seems easy but very difficult to implement, is cyber hygiene. And cyber hygiene, like any other hygiene, even driving on the highway, right? It's still a hygiene. If you feel like you can take a shortcut, when you do that, right, you get in trouble. This is same with cybersecurity hygiene. There are recommendations which are put out there. Companies usually do have access to that. For example, setting a strong password. We talk about it, but then as a human, even I'm thinking, let's say, and I think everybody could relate to that. When I have to set up so many passwords, and then that yes, it is not recommended to have the same password, right? But then when you have so many systems, and then you obviously it's just human nature. You don't have time. You're overwhelmed. You will most likely set the same password for a lot of other systems, which is obviously so. This is the basic, right? And then also the setting up the two-factor authentication, right? So and think, oh my God, this is another thing I have to do, or like those security questions, right? So it just comes down to cyber hygiene, which is humans, because there is this new concept, another buzzword, like information fatigue. I think we're so overwhelmed. There's so many steps,
Yeah.
there's so much information. And this sometimes just we think we do. As humans, we're looking for a shortcut. And this is one of those situations where a shortcut can cost, depending on the size of your company, can cost a lot of money and reputation. That's
Yeah.
how I can explain it.
Yeah. But I think the model rules of professional conduct mention compliance with certain systems in place to protect their clients' information and must take reasonable action to protect those. So even what you said, it's human nature not to have dual authentication, but probably it's mandated by the model rules, right?
Correct. And there is a slight difference between, so there is like a main rule, and there, like in law, as you know, there is a rule and then there are 55 exceptions, right? For example, healthcare institutions are held to a higher standard because of the sensitive information, right? And also with financial institutions. With law firms, they fall a little bit under different category because it is considered that they don't really have access to that information. But in addition to that, even before the cybersecurity law firms have other standards they have to, for example, client confidentiality, right? Three steps are taken by law firms that don't make them as vulnerable. And also it comes down to the complexity of network, right? In a law firm, especially depending on the size, you don't have so many interconnected devices because a lot of times cybersecurity threat or the threat actors are attacking institutions because they're so dependent on uninterrupted services, right? And they're so dependent on, there's so many devices hooked to each other. So when a network is so complex, in a law firm, you don't have that. It is more simple.
Yeah.
So that it makes a little bit less vulnerable, which means this is why we don't hear so many conversation about a law firm was hacked to steal sensitive because it's not dependent on somebody's human's life if a law firm closes down for 24 hours. However, what's more common for law firms is a phishing attack, for example, and that was in the news at some point. I don't remember exactly the case when a law firm or somebody from the law firm received an email, and because the lawyers are being held accountable for keeping the client's finances in a trust, right? So this is the vulnerable part, and somebody was phished. What's a phishing, right? Which they were being tricked into thinking that they're being asked by their executive officer, somebody senior in the firm, to transfer a very large amount of money, right? So this is usually, you could see that more in a law firm, right? Because they know they couldn't touch the money unless somebody in authority would ask them to.
Yeah.
So they were being tricked into that. So we could see that more in law firm, but not with respect to sensitive data. So there's a different way of how they handle data.
Now let's go to the subject of AI, which is all over the news and we're all using it. I mean, it's today's day and age, we can't go around without using AI. How can a law firm use AI properly?
Right after graduating from law school, I was writing a lot of articles on how AI will affect law. And to be honest, I wrote a lot of them on my blog, and then I forgot that I did. I can't explain myself that. I was like so passionate about that. And then I kind of transitioned into business intelligence. And now when I look back, I said, I wrote this, I did write about this because at that time, which was in 2021, we were talking about will AI replace lawyers? What will happen? Will we be out of jobs? So those are questions which, and it seems so far in the future. That was in 2021. So it's now, it's like, okay, I'm 2025, I wrote in 2021. The future is coming so fast due to technology. A lot of companies, even now, I've noticed that a lot of companies are imposing restrictions on their employees with respect to using AI, right? So obviously, we cannot neglect the benefits of AI. For example, if I have to review a case which has hundreds of pages, that would be an opportunity for me to take advantage of that because I could summarize that case. I don't have that much time. So that would really give me time to focus on something else. Or let's say even drafting an email is very popular, or even drafting a motion. But even before AI, for those, the drafting was more automatic than probably was in 2008 or when I was in school. When I was in school, everything was, there was no such thing as template, right? So we are kind of drafting everything. So even before AI, we saw some like some of this tasks being automated. So these are the areas where AI can be. Obviously, you can't say send AI to court. Yes, a lot of things change with Zoom. Maybe you can have an AI being in the meeting. So those are, I think, those are extremes. But then again, I've been noticing that a lot of companies pose restriction, and why? Because especially with law firms, there is that issue of confidentiality. For example, what do you, the information that you put in AI? There are no regulations with respect to you being protecting against who will have access to the data. So it also comes down with hygiene. It's one thing to use AI to draft an email to maybe boost your creativity in the moment when you don't have time to do it, or polish your writing. Editing, it's good. I've heard that a lot of people do that. But then, for example, if you want to do something that involves like putting in your client's confidential information, that's really a bad idea. And again, a lot of companies are sending, this is happening as we speak, they're sending warning to their employees to not access like outside AI tools. Some companies have inside tools, but still there are restrictions because of that reason of confidentiality.
And also to verify everything that the information that the AI gives you, because I've read a case where an attorney submitted a brief to a judge and also submitted an affidavit of the correctness of the information. And it was completely out of nowhere. The case that was cited didn't even exist. It was created by AI. So definitely that particular attorney is in trouble now.
We have to like in everything, and again go back to the questions that I was writing about a few years ago, like will AI replace creativity? Will AI replace us? No, AI is a tool. These are tools. The AI cannot replace critical thinking. AI cannot replace emotional intelligence. So we have to, these are some of the tools actually that we are using to discern what is real from now, because like now we are diving into the area of deepfakes. What is real, what is not real? And this is where the human judgment still stays strong. So we have to trust it and verify, absolutely verify the information, especially when you have to sign off on something that was created with the help of AI. Then I think the due diligence here, this is where comes the due diligence. You have to be careful. Whose data are you putting into the AI? If you're drafting a motion, again, we run into the confidentiality issue. It means that you're putting in your client's information. This is a no. And then not to mention the sources, because there's so much misinformation even without AI. So we have to be aware that this comes down again to the hygiene. We have to apply some hygiene rules there too.
You said about AI that it's the human factor, where humans actually give the prompt to the AI, because the AI gives you back information at the level of the question, at the level of the information that the person, the human, wants to know.
And also we have to be mindful, and those who know more about AI in terms, I'm talking about the tech side, right? Those who understand how that works and what is actually AI about. The answer to some questions will also depend on how much data AI receives, right? From, if there is a popular question, for example, I remember one of our professors said one of the most popular question that was ChatGPT was asked was related to relationships, meaning that you ask ChatGPT something about, I don't know, relationships, and you'll get a lot of answers, maybe even good, more accurate, or more complex answer because there's so much data that was put in. If you're gonna ask maybe ChatGPT how to make mamaliga in a small town in Moldova, most likely you're not gonna get anything or just very little information.
For people that don't know what mamaliga is, it's polenta, and more of people know more of the Italian polenta than the Romanian and Moldovan mamaliga. Now, let's talk about alternate careers for lawyers, because I know that you chose not to practice law and you're doing various other things. I'm not practicing law for known reasons, but now I found something else to do related to law. So, for people that have a law degree but don't want to go the traditional lawyer path, what other career options and skills do you suggest people to do and have?
The part that I'm saddest about is that my master, the LLM in New York, was really no fun. And one thing that because there is not starting with the grading system with the curve, which makes so competitive, and then taking it to another level with respect to very little networking because of the competition. And I think this really hurts folks later in life because it seems like this is it. And when you are in law school and when you're in that competitive, you get engaged in that competitive, I don't know, say rat race, you feel like you're just gonna leave law school and you're just gonna, your name is gonna be all over the place and you're gonna be this big shot lawyer, make a lot of money, and this is it. I'm sorry to break it to you. It's not gonna happen that you, even for those, and from my observation, even those graduates who are stellar, who graduate with, I don't know, straight A's. I've heard recently, which was really a little bit disturbing, ever recently from a student that, oh, having a B is equals failure. So for me, my heart stopped for a little bit. But to not digress from this conversation. So, and then even the bigger, the like the most successful lawyers and graduates get to a point where they get into the real world and they realize the reality is different. So I would suggest taking the time in law school and network, befriend your colleagues, and instead of seeing this competition, because you will meet them in the real world. You'll meet them down the line, and you'll need them. You'll need their support. Number two, so it comes down to soft skills. And I even noticed a lot of lawyers that graduate with straight A's, no, I'm not talking about those who had B's and failed, myself included. So I did have B's in my law school, so whatever. But also to develop soft skills, because I also noticed when I worked with law firms and somebody had to go in front of a judge as a paralegal, nobody wanted to go, even lawyers. I always wanted to be. And I was in front of a judge in White Plains, and I was handling this case with a lawyer who briefed me before the case that everything is fine. You just have to show up. Everything is in the folder, and you just have to be there because whatever. I got there in front of the judge, and I was thinking in White Plains in a court, people will be much nicer than New York. I'm here sitting in front of the judge. The judge is looking through the file, and obviously nothing was in order. And she was very angry. She looks at me. I was still a rookie. She looks at me like, I'm giving you 5 minutes to fix it. How am I going to do a motion and fight? I can't even get the lawyer on the phone. Well, so she gave me 5 minutes. She left the room. I'm calling the lawyer. She's like, oh, okay, whatever. I don't know. I don't remember because obviously lawyers have so many cases. So for her, for me, this was an important moment. Like I'm in front of the judge and the judge clearly hates me, but also I'm representing the firm's face. I'm here not as me. I'm here as, so the lawyer, I don't know if she didn't care or she just was so overwhelmed. So I had to come back to the court and say, okay, I apologize. Let's just, we're humans. Can we just, so in a way that these are the skills that we need to learn early on, either in school or early on, because we will definitely need them, like conflict resolution, communication skills, and also how to give yourself a reality check because you're, at some point you're going to burn out and you will need those people that you once thought they're useless when you're way up. These are the, I think soft skills are really the most difficult to learn for some reason. I'm noticing that even the most impressive lawyers, there is very this non-desire to deal with people. We can't, it's all about people. We can't be in this industry and not learning how to deal with them. I think people skills, communication skills, these are really crucial.
And in terms of other careers related to law?
So this is another. I remember I was still a recent graduate, and I had this amazing job. I was working in law firm business development and Rockefeller Center, and I met this amazing guy. He was probably in his early 50s, and he was doing something like finance, investment. He's like, "Oh, I went to law school. I never took the bar. I kind of got into this, and I love it." So I think I'm encouraging everyone to shut the noise that comes from outside, from the market. I've noticed that a lot of graduates really try to follow the trend, go into areas of laws which are popular or not popular or whatever. It's really driving them insane. And I recommend to really look at your passion. I spend a lot of time trying to understand what drives me, what inspires me. So there are a lot of other ways that you can build a career with a legal background. And to me personally, at law school, it really creates a great foundation, even to get into technology. Right now, for example, with cybersecurity policy and regulations, and also finance. I transitioned into business intelligence and working with one of the big fours in finance. So look for areas where law intersects with other industries, and there are a lot of them. So I really suggest everyone to give some tests. And also another thing that I recently heard, people are really afraid to fail. There is no way to learn or to find what would work for you if you're not willing to do that, because success doesn't teach us anything and failure does. And if you got into one area of law and it doesn't work, do not be afraid to step out of that. You still have time to rethink your career.
You mentioned passion and you mentioned trust. In this world, and especially lawyers, sole practitioners, and leaders in a corporation, what is trust in your understanding in today's day and age with cybersecurity and AI and everything else? How do you understand the word trust?
Thank you, Andrea. Your question really puts a lot of weight on me. Now I have to come here and define trust. I did write an article about that because I've read this amazing book a couple of years ago about who do we trust in the technology age. And actually, the author did a great job doing research. And it actually also took me back how we grew up in the Soviet Union, when we grew up thinking that even walls have ears. There was very little trust. So the author does a great job by going back and forth to different times. He came to the conclusion that in the digital age, this is actually the first time we trust more than we ever did. And this is the proof why. We share our passwords. We're not so paranoid. Even with cyber, like people are being tricked into giving their personal information, not to mention their romance scam. I'm sure a lot of lawyers deal with those cases too. There are so many scams, which shows that in the digital age, we trust more. Technology actually, so I think that my definition of trust is that we can't do anything in life unless we trust. But it doesn't mean that we don't have to take calculated risks. It doesn't mean that we don't have to learn how to mitigate them. But there is no way to, even for lawyers, how are you going to sign up and work with a client if you're not going to go based on trust? That client will follow through, that client will pay for the services, the client tells you the truth. This is for us big, right? Because we know, do we want to know what the client tells us? We better not know. The client hire you to represent you. You need to do your due diligence. I think trust is, we can't operate without trust. This is really one of the elements that is imminent in any interaction, human or business or legal. But
Yeah.
these days we have more, I think, with the technology. And now going back to the author, that we trust more in the digital age, we have more tools to have more trust, meaning we have more control over that with technology. Back in the days, maybe somebody could just say something. Right now, we have more ways to prove how trustworthy someone is. And there are companies that do that for compliance, due diligence. So although we deal with a lot of misinformation, a lot of deep fakes, with technology, it's very difficult to stay off grid, right? I think this gives more opportunity for us to have access to truthful information. So we are in a better place as even as legal professionals.
Thank you. Now that we reached the end, it's that question that I ask every guest. What is one activity in your life that makes you feel more alive?
Walking. I did a lot of, I always like to try new things. Like I was into running, then I got into yoga, and then now I'm doing like soul cycle. But there is nothing replaces long walks. I really feel like it's the only activity that allows you to balance your mind, body, and spirit. So I really recommend it to everyone, especially when you have to gather your thoughts before writing a brief or a motion.
Yeah, definitely. Out in nature. It's recommended on a treadmill, I guess. It's good for the body, but to engage the mind, I think it's out in nature that gives the wholeness of who we are. Well, Galina, thank you so much for being here with us. Your wisdom in the conversation was well thought and prepared and welcomed. And I hope that our listeners will enjoy it.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrea, for your invitation, and thank you for helping us, the professionals, stay alive with your podcast.
Thank you. Our listeners, thank you very much for listening. For more conversations and more guests, please subscribe and follow us. Thank you. We'll see you next week.